Before we learn how to complete the square, let's take a look at one example first. Here we have a perfect square on the left-hand side and a number on the right-hand side of our equation. To get rid of the square, all we have to do is take the square root of both sides. So I will take the square root of x minus 3 squared, and this is equal to the square root of 7. Of course, we have to remember on the right-hand side to include a plus or minus in front of the square root of 7. Now the square root and the square, they cancel out, and we are left with x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. And finally, x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. And this is the answer right here. Now I'm showing you this problem because this is going to be the finishing step of every completing the square problem. Let's take a look at an actual problem to complete the square. Here we have a quadratic on the left-hand side and 0 on the right-hand side. Now we could use the quadratic formula, or we could complete the square. Now the first step to completing the square is always to get the number alone to the right-hand side by itself. So now we have x squared minus 6x. I'm going to leave a space, and this is equal to positive 3. Now the whole idea behind completing the square is to turn the left-hand side into a perfect square like we had in the original problem, x minus 3 quantity squared. Now the question is, how can we turn x squared minus 6 into a perfect square? Well, for the sake of these videos, it's very simple. We take our b term, we divide it by 2. That is what goes inside of the square. So this is actually x minus 3 squared, because negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. But now I have to add something over here that will actually complete this square for me. And when I square out x minus 3, I get x squared minus 6x, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So it turns out that I actually have to add 9 to this side in order to be able to complete that square. Well, this means that I also have to add 9 to the right-hand side, since if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. And 3 plus 9 is equal to 12. Well, we are now in a situation where we can complete the square. This is exactly what we saw in the very first problem. So here we can take the square root of both sides to get rid of that square, of course remembering the plus or minus in front of the 12. And so x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 2 root 3, because we can take the 4 out of 12, and that gives us 2 root 3. And now to solve this, we can just add 3 to both sides. So x is equal to 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. And here's the answer to this particular problem right here. Now let's take a look at a hard one. This one's difficult because there's a 2 in front of the y squared. This is an issue, but it's an issue that can be resolved simply by dividing everything by 2 right off the bat. So if I divide everything by 2, I now have y squared plus y plus 5 halves equals 0. Well, that's not so bad. We'll do exactly what we did in the last problem. Let's move this number, 5 over 2, over to the right-hand side. So here we have y squared plus y, leave a space, equals negative 5 over 2. And now we have to complete the square. To complete the square, we will divide the middle number, the b, by 2. Well, 1 divided by 2, that gives us 1/2. And that's the number that goes inside of the perfect square. So we have y plus 1/2 quantity squared. But now in order to actually complete the square, we have to add some number to both sides of this equation. That number is 1/2 squared. And 1/2 squared gives us 1/4. So we are going to add 1/4 to both sides. This requires us to add two fractions on the right-hand side. -5/2 can be rewritten as -10/4 plus 9/4 is -9/4. -10/4 plus 1/4, -9/4. And now we can take the square root of both sides, of course remembering to include the plus or minus in front of the -9/4. So here we have y plus 1/2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of -9/4. Well, we can take out the I, and then the square root of 9/4 is 3/2. This is plus or minus 3/2i. And now we can just subtract 1/2 from both sides, so y is equal to -1/2 plus 3/2i. And this is the answer by completing the square. Thank you very much for watching.